something's gone wrong. For all our vigilance and battle scars over the Bill of Rights, have we let the flame of freedom's torch grow cold? Because there can be no torch to pass where there's no flame.
Freedom has only one enemy it cannot defeat, and that is negligence. So your presence here, now, today, is an act of reverence. Of all man's works beneath the heavens, none shines brighter than our Constitution. I think Jefferson and Paine, Adams, Madison, Mason, Franklin, I think they're looking down right now at us. I think they understand what we're trying to do, what we strive to do. Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Good evening, everybody. This is Joe Joseph again on the, what's today's date? Holy moly, I think it's the 11th, the 12th. Let's call it the 12th. The 12th of December, 2010. And what a show we have for you this evening. Our special guest tonight is Margo Lane. Margo Lane is a attorney from Kansas, the great state of Kansas. And let me tell you, folks, she is a wealth of information, does her homework, and always a pleasure to talk to on the show. Let's make sure everybody's in here, first of all, before we get the ball rolling. Uncle Griff, you there?
Holy moly, Batman. I think that was Captain Marvel that said that, actually, not Batman.
Yeah, I don't think, holy moly, no. And he wasn't Golly Gee Willikers either.
With Shazam. Well, I'm anxious to hear Margo tonight.
Yeah, me too. Me too, for sure. And let me tell you, folks, like I said, if you haven't heard Margo before, get ready, because it's going to be a good 2 hours worth of radio. Let me tell you. John, you there, buddy? Let me hear that audio.
Bell's on, my friend.
Sweet. Wonderful. And, you know, folks, before we get into the Freemen and the Sovereign conversation, I just want to point out to folks, if you notice, there's been a lot of talk about this WikiLeaks ordeal and how it's all of a sudden coming out that it was what do you call it, John? What's a good word for it?
Wiki-op.
A wiki-op, that's right. And in the days and weeks to come, I think what you guys are going to come to find out is that it was indeed that, and that it really, really, really wasn't that hard to see. And for a lot of you listening tonight, you guys knew it. But the military is highly compartmentalized, number one. So you've got that compartmentalization. Number two, as Griff says, they trip over their own 2 feet all the time. And that much is for certain also. And number three, we're talking about a private first class that had access to well over, I think it was a million wires, John, I think it was. And isn't it interesting that this is all happening around the same time that our economy is in full collapse, that our foreign policy has never been worse. And, you know, I still to this day can't believe, I said, can it possibly get any worse than George Bush? Wow. It can get a lot worse. And
be careful what you wish for, Joe. You just might get it. I mean, look at Obama and try to...
Johnny, auto-tune, reconnect, buddy, reconnect. It's really unfathomable to me, and yet here we are living it today, aren't we, Griff?
Yes, I don't believe for a second that that one boy had access to all of those documents. I think it's a planned deal. Not sure who's behind it, but it was an orchestrated event.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And and that's the thing, folks, is use your discernment, because chances are, if it's too good to be true, it is. It's totally off base and off kilter, and I'll leave it at that. Hey, John, are you still there, buddy?
I am still here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, John, awful. Hang up and reconnect, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, folks. Oh, Margo, are you there?
Yes.
Outstanding. And you've been doing a lot of homework lately on sovereignty, on the sovereign individuals, the freemen, I guess you could call them. Would you say?
Yeah, it's a fascinating legal law. It's just a fascinating area of the law.
What do you think? What's your take on it? Especially being an attorney, what's your take on the sovereign citizen stance on their on a lot of the rights that they exert? Do they in fact have those rights?
Well, before I get into it, let me just say that I'm a firm believer in the philosophical school of you do create your own reality to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And, so just kind of everything that I say, you can kind of take it under that philosophy. But as far as the legal principles of the sovereign citizen movement go, I find it interesting. And I think what I find most disturbing is not that people in the legal community disagree with them. I find it interesting that people will not even entertain the possibility. It's automatically foreclosed in the legal profession. Anybody who tries to claim a sovereign citizen stance or a freeman stance is automatically considered a kook or a crazy. And, for a country that values its First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, I really think it's important for people to stop for a minute and say, okay, I want to hear what this is all about. And even if I disagree, I have to admit that somebody may have a point here, and it's something that's worth thinking about and at least looking into. And that's just not happening in our justice system. It's not happening in our legal system.
Now, Griff, now this is from a young, bright attorney that's definitely got one hell of a future, if you ask me. What is your experience with the legal system, Griff, seeing as how you come from a background, you married an attorney, your father-in-law was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Virginia. So what's your take on it?
I don't think Margo has a future in law.
Oh, no, I said a bright future.
As you just said.
One hell of a bright future. It may not be in law. You're absolutely right.
Yes. Margo, it's good to hear your voice again. We haven't talked in a long time, but I'm delighted
to hear you, Griff.
Thank you. In answer to that, Joe, let me start by asking Margo: is there any law that requires people to pay income tax?
Well, it depends on who you are. If you ask a federal court judge that question, you're going to get a totally different answer than if you ask a sovereign citizen. I can tell you what both sides of the argument are.
Is there a law that you can cite? Can you cite a law?
Actually, and that's the problem. I don't believe that there is. And part of the reason that I don't believe that there is because I have personally become aware that there is evidence that exists that the 16th Amendment, which is the Income Tax Amendment, was never properly ratified. But even if you discredit that, even if you choose not to believe that, you can take as an absolute certainty that Title 26 of the United States Code, which is the income tax code, was never positively enacted into law, ever. So I think...
What does that mean, Margo? What does that mean exactly when you say that?
Well, basically what it means is, in order for it to become positively enacted into law, Congress, must vote on it by a majority, and they must pass it. Well, one particular version of Title 26 of the United States Code was never positively enacted into law, so it was never formally passed by the number of required votes in Congress. It may have passed with a majority, but maybe it didn't pass with a quorum. So it kind of gets complicated as to what exactly the majority is that you need in order to positively enact a particular piece of legislation. But how you can tell is if you go to a law library, you open up the code, any code, on the inside page you will see a little asterisk in there. It's like a little star. And that little star actually means that law, whatever it is, was positively enacted. There is no place in the tax code where you can find that little asterisk as the tax code currently applies. And, a lot of people don't realize that, but this is how they get around it. They get around it because you have a bank account, and when you sign your name onto the signature card for that bank account, if you look at the big contract, it says subject to bank rules and all that, and if you actually ask them to give you that contract so you can review it, it basically says that by signing up for an account with that bank, you're consenting to Title 26 of the United States Code. So the position is this. If for some reason that you're investigated for tax evasion or some sort of tax crime, before they prosecute you, the agents will find your signature card on your bank account. And you can sit there and protest under the Fourth Amendment the seizure of your bank account records, and you can protest against Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate yourself. And the judge will just laugh, and none of those arguments will be accepted because that signature on your bank account is actually considered a contractual waiver of your Fourth and Fifth Amendment constitutional rights insofar as the tax code is concerned.
Margo, you can't waiver your rights under the law.
I agree.
You can't do that.
I agree with you.
That's a known firm carved in granite legal position. You can't waiver rights. And in addition, if you did go that direction, you're signing a document with a private company, not the government. So you've never entered into any agreement with government.
Well, and I absolutely agree with you, Griff, but that's their argument whenever you go into federal court on a tax case. And
but you've never entered into an agreement with the government, though. How can they say you have when you haven't?
Or have you?
Well, and that's an interesting question in and of itself, Joe, because if you actually look at a contract like that, you can argue that it's actually an adhesion contract, which means that you did not bargain for it. It's kind of a unilateral contract in the fact that you didn't have an opportunity to bargain for any of those terms. They were just kind of slapped on you, and you weren't fully apprised. There was no actual informed consent of what exactly was happening when you signed that contract. So I would argue that it's actually an invalid contract. However, my arguments would not be successful in a federal court.
But it's not a contract. It's not a contract. It starts with the fact that under law, under any United States law, you can't waiver rights, and it's based on waivering your rights. And it's not a contract by definition, and it's not with the government. It's with a private company, and it's marginal at best. I was making a point by asking that question. I guess we got off the main thing. So if there is no agreement or there is no requirement, I think you're required to file the paper by regulation. Congress dumped all of its responsibility on an agency, and the agency, the Internal Revenue, has gone wild with that agreement with the Congress. The Congress is pretty much out of it. They just said, run with it, something like that. And the IRS has been going on their mandates and regulations. It's not necessarily law. It's just the will of the Internal Revenue, which is a really questionable basis for them to be doing anything.
And I would agree with that. It violates, I think, the non-delegation doctrine in Article 1, to be sure.
Mm-hmm. And a bunch of other. So if people all over the United States are paying their labor to a government, and if you don't, the government will put you in jail, and there's no basis for doing it, and there's no law, but the courts will enforce a bogus law that they think exists, or maybe they don't. Maybe a lot of the judges just know it doesn't exist and doing it anyway. What possible chance would you have with your position on the rights of the people? I've forgotten the term. What is the term about your topic tonight?
The sovereign
about
citizen
agreement?
Sovereignty, yeah, the sovereignty. How far would you get on that if the big thing is the tax and the putting you in jail and there's no regulation, no law? How could you hope to win anything on sovereignty?
My point is tonight that while it's an interesting movement and there are a handful of people who have gotten away with it, the vast majority of the people will never be successful in their attempts, even if they have an attorney.
It just depends on the judge.
I think it depends on the judge probably more than anything else. But even if you have a sympathetic federal judge, like, for instance, there was a federal judge named Fox that totally bought into the sovereign citizen movement. But the problem that you have is the government will appeal whatever decision that judge makes to a circuit court of appeals in the federal system. And that appellate judge will most likely overturn anything the district court judge has ruled on. So if it goes to an appeal, you're guaranteed to lose the case. Absolutely.
And that's what's so interesting, Margo, is the fact that, I see a lot of talk about this. I see a lot of people making some moves in that general direction. But the fact of the matter is, there needs to be more public interest in this type of movement for it to gain foothold, and there just isn't. There's so much lethargy, and there's so much just numbness out there that they just don't do it. So it can't gain a foothold, and it can't go forward. You know what I mean? And that's what I see.
Well, and I would agree with you. There's two big problems, though, two big challenges that the sovereignty movement is going to have to address if it wants to overcome that problem and gain perhaps the interest of a wider following. And first and foremost, I think that there are people in the sovereignty movement that, quite frankly, scare the crap out of judicial officials, lawyers, prosecutors, and what have you. For instance, I was talking to an attorney last night that used to be a prosecutor, and this prosecutor was telling me that they were very aware of the sovereign citizen movement, even on a municipal level, because sovereign citizens would show up to court and they would be very belligerent, and they would do things like take their cars and block in the prosecutors in parking lots and rant and rave and scream at these prosecutors saying, you don't have jurisdiction over us. Now, while that may be true, they're certainly not helping out their cause by acting belligerently in a public forum. Often the first impression that people have of sovereign citizens is not a very good one. Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League, neither organizations which I identify with or like particularly, nonetheless, they have gone after the sovereign citizen movement quite vigorously, and they do it because, unfortunately, there's quite a large number of skinheads or neo-Nazis in the sovereign citizen movement, and so obviously that doesn't help out the movement at all either. And so the problem is, you've got bad press, you have bad behavior on both sides of the fence when it comes to having a discussion on this topic. And really, I think the most important thing is that people just need to take the time and view these kinds of items with an open mind and without just foreclosing the possibility altogether.
But I'm gonna pose a question to you, and before you answer it, I'm gonna get John King on. And I'll pose it to John because John could answer it so much better than I can. John, how do you argue in a civil manner with the mafia, with the mob? How do you do it? Oh, John, your mic bad. Call back on Skype. How do you do it, Margo? How do you do it to where they deal with you and they respect you and they respect your rights and everything else? Because we see that all the time. I mean, people get manhandled if they try to go up against the system.
Well, and I'm not going to disagree with you there because I run into problems with it on a daily basis. But, and I will say this, you know, anytime I sit there and I try to think about how unfair this system is, I try to think about what Gandhi did. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but look at how successful he was. And
Absolutely.
He was nonviolent. And the problem, in my opinion, that the biggest problem that the current system has is that it is a very coercive system. It uses all kinds of scare tactics, deceit, fraud to coerce people into living the life of sheeple, and that's what I call it. And
right.
I don't believe that you can have any type of a successful, honest movement if you yourself are violent or coercive, because at the end of the day, coercion is just another form of violence. So I know this is going to maybe sound like a weak and unsatisfactory answer to some people, but, you know, I sit there and I try to tell myself that human beings don't have the first idea of what justice truly is, because we're not omniscient, we're not omnipotent. There's no way we can know what is absolutely and truly and totally fair, except when it comes to our own individual lives. And it's really important, even though you perceive a lot of injustice going on around you, to try not and judge the situation too harshly, because we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle no matter who we are. And so I think when I get upset in court and I see a lot of this perceived injustice going on, I just try to remind myself that I have faith in something much larger than me, much larger than humanity, that will ultimately render a perfect justice. And that I just need to have faith in that and be patient in that will that is greater than my own.
Well, let me give you my 2 cents on that. I think civil disobedience is one of the most effective tools out there.
Certainly.
However, and I mean, look at what France did with a 2-year increase in their retirement age. They rose hell. I mean, really, they shut down the highways, they shut down the transportation systems, they stopped refining oil. People refuse to go to work. And let me tell you, it's as simple as it really is when you think about it, folks. It's as simple as this. If this is the way, if you get enough people behind you and you say, this is not the way we want to do it, don't go to work. It's that simple. Just don't go to work. Stay home. Stay home for 2 weeks. Bus drivers, stay home. I guarantee you, if garbage isn't collected for a week up in New York, they'll make changes. I'm just telling you, that stuff like that does happen. But what you got to do is light a fire under people's keisters. You got to catch lightning in a bottle somehow. You know, the guy that we had on, Michael Roberts, the pilot that sparked off the TSA debate. Who knew? Do you think he knew that he was going to spark off a firestorm of backlash and outrage because of these naked body scanners or anything else? No, of course not. He was just asserting his rights. That's all he was doing, is saying, hell no, I'm not going to take this. That's enough. And that's all we really have to do. But I will say this, don't think you're not going to get pushback. Oh, they're going to push back. They're not going to back down, just like they still haven't backed down with the body scanners. And newsflash, they went and they took the Indian ambassador to the United States and groped her. Now she's all freaking offended. She says she'll never come back to the United States, and now the TSA sparked an international incident because of that. So don't think that we can't change things. I will say that Gandhi did it right. Absolutely. He effected some great change. And if anybody reads into the life of Gandhi, you'll find out that his ways and his methods were extremely effective. They were extremely effective. And we, too, can harness that type of energy. The problem is, though, take a look at it. Take a look at what is going on in America, where you have entitlement programs, people on the government payroll, collecting checks just to sit idly by. It's almost like don't bother us, we won't bother you. Here you go, hush money. Go off. So you got half the population right now doing that. But I guarantee you, folks, it won't take a lot of people. It won't take that many people in percentage-wise to the whole population in order to affect the change or to make to get people's attention. The only problem is, and Griff, I'm going to ask you this: do you think it's too late for that?
Yes, I do. Our only salvation, as I have said, is for the collapse to occur. Let it collapse. Let it go down hard. Let the monetary system go down. And then we're on level playing field. Then we can rebuild later on. But there is certainly going to be a lot of blood and misery between now and then. It's the French people, that's what they do best, Joe. They've been doing it since year one. They riot and they burn their own stuff. Just like the blacks out in California many years ago in Watts, they burnt their own houses. That's what the French do.
Yeah, no, they do.
It doesn't make any sense, does it?
It doesn't make any sense. But that's the problem. See, I'm kind of taking the stance now, and I want to get your opinion on this, Margo. I'm taking the stance now that the system itself is just so corrupt and so convoluted and so I don't the word escapes me as far as this. I want to say acrid, just dark. That the only way to fix it at this point is to let it crash and burn, and then pick up the pieces afterwards with whatever's left. I mean, that's how I see it. What's your take on it?
Well, I believe that the system is ultimately unsustainable because I really believe that you cannot have a foundation for anything without honesty and respect. And there's no honesty and there's no respect left in our foundation. There's nothing but big cracks and holes where we have fraud and deceit and scare tactics and what have you. And that foundation at some point will have to crumble. Now, how it's going to crumble and what that's going to look like, I have no idea. Now, right. I can tell you that I really do think that you're right about civil disobedience. I think that goes a long way. And there's lots of little things that people can do to be civilly disobedient that they may not even realize. For instance, you brought up the TSA thing. Well, I don't fly anymore, and you're never going to get me on another plane again unless it's a private plane or I don't have to go through security. One way or the other, I am never flying again. And if everyone had that kind of an attitude, the airlines would not be making any money. We would put them out of business. Regulations and laws would have to change because travel industry would grind to a halt.
Exactly.
and then again, if people, for instance, decided all of a sudden, we've got this huge battle going on in Congress right now, which I'm watching with some strange interest, because I sit there and I think, here's a bunch of millionaires saying that millionaires should pay more taxes. But the ironic thing is, millionaires don't really pay taxes because they have charitable foundations. And if you want me to explain to you all the ways that they hide their money in order to evade taxes, I would be happy to do that. But suffice it to say that it's kind of a red herring argument in my eyes. And so, I sit there and I'm watching this stuff happen, and I'm thinking to myself, all anybody has to do is just decide that 1/3 or 1/2 of the population even is just going to not file its tax returns this year in protest.
Yeah.
And if that happens, there's no way the system as it is right now could withstand that type of a civil attack.
That's right. Now hold that thought, Margo. When we come back, folks, we're going to continue our conversation with Margo Lane, and I'm also going to get John King in here because he has firsthand experience going up against the mafiosos in trying to declare a sovereignty. All that and more coming up on Freedomlink Radio. Stay tuned.
Did you ever wish that you could have done something while you still had the chance? What will you do if your income ends tomorrow? Or if you lose your home, as many already have? Do you have enough money to survive through an economic depression? If you don't want to gamble with your future, then FreeToProsper.com can help you quickly end your debt problems, protect your property and possessions, and develop a personal strategy to get you through the hard times. Most importantly, you get to keep your money and not pay another cent to creditors. Our program is often superior to bankruptcy, consolidation, or settlement. Visit FreeToProsper.com to find out more. This is your real chance to act ahead, so don't delay. Your future may depend on it. Call 718-615-0123 to learn more. That's 718-615-0123. Or visit FreeToProsper.com today.
Is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a New World Order.
You are listening to the Intel Hub News Network, crushing the New World Order piece by piece.
In a world where corrupt oppressors and oligarchs have seized control of the populations, total tyranny is amongst us. The burden of humanity rests on our shoulders. The only way out is to expose the global crime syndicate known as the New World Order. Together, we are all one. Together, we are Intel soldiers. The battle for free humanity ensues. Join us in the fight. TheIntelHub.com.
Secure your future. Get your non-hybrid seed pack now. With the looming economic crisis, food shortages, and other toxic disasters, now is the time to be ready. Just click on the Heirloom Organics banner at the top of our Blog Talk Radio page today. Secure your future and the future of your family in hard times. Heirloom Organic Seeds.
Join me, Joe Joseph, John King, and A.C. Griffith, Thursdays and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern for Freedomlink Radio on the Intel Hub News Network. Well, folks, we're back with our guest Margo Lane, and tonight's topic is about sovereignty and the free man movement. The number to call if anybody wants any questions or comments about this, 877-598-8549. That's 877-598-8549. And we'll also be monitoring the chat room to make sure that we don't miss anything. Folks, if you want to listen to 64K stream also, go to www.theintelhubnewsnetwork.com, and there you click on the Listen Live, Listen and Chat tab at the top of the screen, and it will take you to our live stream at 64K, much better audio quality than it is here at Blog Talk Radio. So you have two places to listen, and we anxiously await any callers, and especially you, Jim from Amarillo. If you're out there, please call in, as you are one of the few free men that have seemed to get away with it. So we would love to hear how you went about doing that. But getting back to the conversation there, Margo, you were talking about how these businessmen actually hide all their millions of dollars through charitable foundations and trusts and things like that. But what we're seeing, at least this is what I'm kind of seeing, is that I'm seeing a bunch of underground bases being built. I'm seeing seed vaults being built. I'm seeing FEMA camps being built. I see these elitists taking all of the fiat trillions of dollars that they've embezzled and stolen from the American people, and the people of the world for that matter, and are buying up land, soil, tangible assets, things like that. They're not keeping it in paper. And before we get to John King, I just wanted to know what your take on that was.
Personally, I think that that's going on because we are looking at some sort of a massive celestial event. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what it is. I believe in it, though, and I really do think that something big is coming. That's what they're trying to do with global warming / climate change. I don't believe that that's necessarily man-made. Obviously, humanity contributes to an environmental decline, but I don't think it happens due to humans on such a scale as to be as significant as we'd like to think we are. Right. And I really do think that some sort of a celestial event is coming, and they're preparing for it, and they really just don't care about what happens to the rest of us.
Yeah, it kind of seems like the whole system's crashing and burning all around us. Now, John, you went up against the mafioso types, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Right about the beginning of March, I decided to
Why don't you tell Margo, brief Margo on what exactly you did.
Okay, well, hi, Margo. Thank you for coming on. The early March, I decided I was going to go for my sovereignty, and I filed some paperwork with the federal government. I wrote the U.S. State Department and told them that I renounced their jurisdiction over me. I wrote the Pennsylvania State Department and did the same thing. I wrote all the magistrates that were in my local area, and I did the same exact thing. And I wrote the president judge to my local county judge. And about a week and a half later, my neighbor ambushed me as I was pulling my car into my drive with my family on board. And it caused me to make my car almost hit the house. I pulled forward and ended up in my yard as his headlights were blinding me. And I circled back through my yard, was able to park my car in my driveway. As his car was facing my house, he began to flash his lights at me, bright, dim, on, off. So I called the police. The police came out, talked to me, talked to him, and the officer told me that if I arrest him, I also have to arrest you on similar charges. And being I'm the only one that drives in the family, and I have to be here for my son when my wife comes home from work, before she comes home from work, I said, absolutely not, forget it, never mind, go away, I don't want anything to do with you, you're useless to me. 48 hours later, my neighbor decides he's going to go down to the police station, and he made up a story that I tried to run him over. I was going to kill him. I come at him to beat him up on foot. I tried to run him over with my car. The police came, and about a week later, with a warrant, they arrested me on reckless endangerment, terroristic threats, harassment, and disorderly conduct.
Now, John, just to make it clear for everybody, you called the police, right?
I'm the one that called the police and had them come out. It's all on videotape. I have a home surveillance system that has audio, video, and the whole sequence of events was caught on tape. So they
if
came
you
to
don't
my
mind
house.
my saying so, that was your first mistake. But go ahead.
What's that?
Calling the police.
Well, I know that. I know that now.
Monday morning quarterbacking, of course, yes.
Well, they came to the house April 12th with a warrant, knocked on the door, I answered it. They asked me to step out, I did. And they told me that I was under arrest. They put the cuffs on me, never read me my rights, took me down there to the police station, fingerprinted me, took my picture, put me in the database, recuffed me, took me across town in front of the magistrate, to whom I served no more than 3 weeks prior that I don't recognize his authority. Put me on $10,000 unsecured bail and charged me, read me my rights right there. We set up a preliminary hearing for 2 weeks, and I went and I tried to represent myself. Now, I've always been under the assumption that the preliminary hearing was established so that if there was enough evidence, it can be sent to trial, and if there isn't, it stops right there. The only thing they had was the word of a liar and his say-so and circumstantial evidence as the police took pictures of the photographs of my tire prints in the yard. 48 hours prior to going to the preliminary hearing, I gave the police department a copy of the videotape from the surveillance camera that showed that my neighbor trumped up the charges and that the charges were false and that I was innocent. They never watched the videotape, as I used the videotape as a counterclaim to my neighbor's story. When we went to the preliminary hearing, the assistant district attorney knew of the videotape after I mentioned it. She didn't want to watch it. They pushed it to a higher court, and it got sent to the state court down in here in Mercer County Courthouse, that with circumstantial evidence and nothing more. Now, mind you, these are the people that I served no more than 3 weeks ago, and they were almost
giddy like school children.
Oh yes, it was. You'd have thought they found Hoffa. So now I had to go hire an attorney, a criminal attorney. Cost me $5,000, and he bargained with the district attorney. They didn't want to press charges on me because with the videotape they realized my neighbor was a liar. They would not drop charges outright. I knew that that was just a way for them to grease the skids, so I thought I would help it along a little bit. And so we come to an arrangement or a bargain that I would plead guilty to a summary offense of disorderly conduct if they dropped the criminal charges, in which they were happy to do. And the reason I pled guilty to a summary offense is I used obscene language very loudly, very plainly, clearly in public, not knowing that my freedom of speech was abridged and that profanity was not covered under the freedom of speech. So, to make a longer story as short as possible, I walked away with a $75 fine and court costs away from the judge who I served back in March, and this happened Tuesday. I went in front of the president judge who dropped the charges in order for me to get out of them and pay them a $75 kickback fee, so to speak. But this all culminated because I believe I applied for my sovereignty and went up against the system.
And you're probably correct.
Yeah, they wanted to jackboot him, and that's exactly what they did. I think the only thing, Margo, they didn't provision for was this toothless hick didn't have they didn't plan on him being able to surveil his property. And I think at one point in time, John, didn't they say that, oh, well, Mr. Anderson, you know something, sir, you're violating wiretapping laws by surveilling property in that way. Do you remember that, my friend?
Yes, the assistant prosecutor at the preliminary hearing stated that she would have to review the videotape at a later time to assure that the state that I had not violated any wiretapping laws. And all I was doing was surveying my property with audio-video. Come to find out that audio may not be legal in the state of Pennsylvania on a security system because of wiretapping, which doesn't really make sense. If I'm surveying if I'm surveying my property and someone comes to my house when I'm away and breaks in and they say what they're going to do to my wife and child if they find them inside, I can go to jail because I caught them committing a crime on tape? That's ludicrous.
What do you think, Margo?
I totally agree. I believe it's absolutely ludicrous, and I think that the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, give a person a right, an absolute right, to be secure in their home and to do whatever they wish in their home, in the privacy of their own home. So if you want to have a surveillance system in your own home that has audio and video on it, then you should feel free to do that. And I really think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to bend the rules of evidence and sit there and claim some sort of authenticity issue with the piece of evidence to try to keep it from coming in for consideration by the jury or the judge. Usually that's what anybody does. If they're afraid of a piece of evidence, it's a cop-out, essentially, that they'll try to sit there and manufacture a reason why it's not admissible because it's somehow not authentic, either due to unreliability or the fact that it violated some law in obtaining it. And I think that that's really bogus, especially if someone has taken the time to have a surveillance system in their own home. For instance, and this is what I mean about a system that is completely unsustainable because it's so deceitful. It has so many cracks. So if you were to apply that same logic that they applied to John's situation, where his surveillance tapes aren't admissible because they might be violating some wiretapping laws because they record audio, well, why wouldn't that same logic then apply to the dash cams in a police car? You know, those record
exactly
audio.
Right.
They record
that was just...
And that's precisely what I mean. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and eventually they're going to put so many cracks into this system that they just can't hold up their foundation anymore because they're going to get to a point where they're going to start shooting themselves in the leg.
Let me just interrupt for a second and say this because there's a lot of chatter going on in the classroom about this. Darlena, let me say this: when John did approach them the first time, he made sure that he told them that he was not John. He was representing John. How did you explain it to them?
I don't remember my exact word for word.
That was your fiduciary or something like that. I can't remember what the heck it was.
Yes, that was my fiduciary, and I am here as a representative, a third-party representative of my fiduciary. I am John of the King family. I am not John Anderson. Thank you, Your Honor. I will do so as long as it does not enter into a binding contract with this court.
Right, exactly. When he did that, oh my goodness gracious, that's when all hell kind of broke loose. And
that's when the district attorney. That's when the district attorney had the audacity to, in open court, to say the Constitution does not apply.
Yeah, that was very, very interesting.
Very interesting. Did it? No, it didn't, did it?
No, and well, that goes to your
he was
point,
telling
Chris.
the truth. The Constitution didn't apply in that court.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Why would it? It's admiralty. It's an admiralty court.
Well, no, he told you the truth. The judge, and more, the judge and the court officials probably knew nothing about John's position.
They didn't, because whenever a sovereign comes into court, the first thing the prosecutor and the judge do is they kind of get this little thing in their head that goes, does not compute, does not compute. And they just sit there and they say, what the hell is this? And they have gone through a training where they are told that these people are nut jobs. Any argument that they present is crazy talk. And so automatically it doesn't compute, and their little programming kicks in and says, these people are crazy, they don't know what they're talking about, here's the standard answer.
That's right.
And that's exactly what happens, and that's why I said it's so important for people to put that training aside and say, let's just take a piece of this puzzle, isolate it, and let's just consider it without any emotional attachment whatsoever, and let's just entertain the idea of what if this is a possibility, and go from there. I mean, what's really the harm in doing that?
Yeah, and in this case, John had actually hired somebody who's pretty well known in the Patriot community to actually go up there and help him out, be his constitutional advisor, I think it was, right, John?
Yes, absolutely.
And how did that work out for you?
Well, they asked who this person was, and the person spoke up as to what his position was. He was my lawful counsel, advising me on what steps that I should be taking. They asked this person if they were licensed to practice law within the state of Pennsylvania. My lawful counsel said no. The district attorney stood up and said, take a seat in the gallery. If you do not, I will have you charged with practicing law inside the state of Pennsylvania without a license, which is a first-class misdemeanor. And to my surprise and rude awakening, for someone who should be a sovereign citizen and someone whose laws don't apply, he sat down very, very quickly and stayed quiet.
And this gentleman, John, has supposedly gone against, where has he argued cases?
7th Circuit Court, if I do remember.
And so basically he ran with his tail between his legs back to where he came.
Well, we were supposed to go after the preliminary hearing. We were going to go up to my camp, and I was going to show him my bug-out location. But when we got home, he abruptly wanted the remaining balance of the money that we agreed upon in the contract, and then abruptly left within 2 hours after the preliminary hearing. It was at that point I began to see things for as they really are, that I got conned.
Now, yeah, and that's exactly right, because so there are some people in the chat room that are chiming up and said, he has to be sponsored by a licensed attorney, and he should have known that, or would have known that.
Sure. That's called pro hoc vice. Anybody that goes to court on a regular basis knows that.
Right. Oh, hey, guess who we got here, folks? I got to bring him on the line. We got about 4 minutes to break, and then we'll have him on in the second hour. Jim from Amarillo, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Hot diggity dog. I was hoping you'd call in because, Margo, Jim here is a sovereign. You reside in Texas, do you not, Jim?
Yes, I do.
And that's one of the most sovereign-friendly states. As a matter of fact, one of our good friends on the show, Michael Bednarik, also resides in Texas. Now, he was the 2004 Libertarian presidential candidate, and he also has exercised his sovereignty and lives in that way. So it'll be interesting. I would love to have you guys talk to one another and do that. But
I mean, we can all learn something from each other.
That's what I'm saying. But we're going to hold off. As a matter of fact, let me go to break now. I'm going to go to break now. When we come back, we're going to have Jim from Amarillo. We're going to have Margo. We got John. It's a sovereignty extravaganza here, folks, on the Freedomlink radio show here on the Intel Hub News Network. So stay tuned. Remember, folks, if anybody has any questions or comments, the number to call, 877-598-8549. Stay tuned. We will be right back. Join me, Joe Joseph, John King, and A.C. Griffin, Thursdays and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern for Freedomlink Radio on the Intel Hub News Network.
In a world where corrupt oppressors and all oligarchs have seized control of the populations, total tyranny is amongst us. The burden of humanity rests on our shoulders. The only way out is to expose the global crime syndicate known as the New World Order. Together, we are all one. Together, we are Intel soldiers. The battle for free humanity ensues. Join us in the fight. TheIntelHub.com.
Did you ever wish that you could have done something while you still had the chance? What will you do if your income ends tomorrow? Or if you lose your home, as many already have? Do you have enough money to survive through an economic depression? If you don't want to gamble with your future, then FreeToProsper.com can help you quickly end your debt problems, protect your property and possessions, and develop a personal strategy to get you through the hard times. Most importantly, you get to keep your money and not pay another cent to creditors. Our program is often superior to bankruptcy, consolidation, or settlement. Visit FreeToProsper.com to find out more. This is your real chance to act ahead, so don't delay. Your future may depend on it. Call 718-615-0123 to learn more. That's 718-615-0123. Or visit FreeToProsper.com today.
The Intel Hub Radio Show, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Oracle Broadcasting, and also simulcast on the Intel Hub News Network.
We'll continue to work together to achieve peace. That's what we want. Freedom and peace.
You are listening to the Intel Hub News Network, crushing the New World Order piece by piece.
Well, we're back, folks. We're joined by Margo Lane. We're joined by Jim from Amarillo. We got Griff here. We got the one, the only John King. And before we hit King's Court, John, I know you got some stuff you want to add, so take it away, my friend.
Thank you. Well, it's no accident, I don't think, that after all this is over and all said and done, I'm trying to find an attorney who, on my behalf, will go up against these monsters so that I can sue them for compensation. My neighbor for fraud and filing false police report, defamation of character. My name was slandered in the newspaper. The police department for false arrest and arresting me without evidence. And the district attorney or the assistant district attorney for sending it down to a higher court without evidence and further oppressing me. I wouldn't mind suing them for 7 figures. And the reason I arrive at 7 figures, Margo, is you can't put a price on freedom. They had me facing 2 years in the state penitentiary. But if I was to put a price on freedom, I'd say $1.25 million a year would do me just fine. But wouldn't you know it? I can't find a single attorney within a 75-mile radius as of yet that's willing to help me with this. They've either bowed out or won't return my phone calls. I called an attorney up in Erie, and she told me that she couldn't help me because I'm in another county 60 miles south, and I may be out of her, quote, jurisdiction, and that I may want to try an attorney in my county. And I would have to say to that, how can I take an attorney that's in my county to sue the district attorney? That's a conflict of interest. So I'm sort of stuck, and I'm very, very frustrated right now at the whole thing. I'm being further oppressed. I spent almost $10,000 to secure my freedom with lawyer fees and so forth and so on, and I have been injured. I called the police on both occasions, and I'm the one that got pinched for it and arrested because I decided to go up against the system as a sovereign citizen, and I've been injured. I don't feel that I can trust my local police department. I feel that I've been psychologically damaged. If something happens to me from now on and I call the police, am I going to go to jail over this? I don't know. I don't want to be here anymore. I can't. I got to live here because I don't have a job, and I'm stuck here at this house. And I know the law enforcement officers and the court system around me is, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, that they're corrupt. But if you knew the ins and outs of everything that took place from start to go, I believe a lot of you would arrive at that same conclusion too. Do you have any suggestions for me to find an attorney so that I can start civil proceedings, Margo?
Well, finding an attorney that's going to go up on against the government in a case like that is going to be really difficult, and I'll tell you why. There's something called sovereign immunity, and that's usually what a government claims in a situation like this. Basically, it's a defense. It's an absolute defense for the government to claim incompetence and say, listen, we're just the government. We're that incompetent. Sorry, you can't sue us for damages. And usually that works, unfortunately. There's only a few rare instances where this quote-unquote sovereign immunity won't apply. Now, you could possibly look at something like a malicious prosecution case, but the problem you're going to have is a lot of these lawyers aren't going to want to, pardon my language, but crap where they eat, you know, and so a lot of them probably aren't going to be willing to take up a case like that unless you essentially pay them a lot of money up front to do this. And that's really unfortunate because if you look at just even a medical malpractice case, in a medical malpractice case, a plaintiff's attorney has to find experts that come from usually out of state and across the country just to find some expert that will testify against a doctor that they are not familiar with. And so basically the problem that you're going to have here is that you're going to have to find an attorney that is willing to travel into the state of Pennsylvania who either has reciprocity in the state of Pennsylvania or who knows the local council in Pennsylvania and will be able to bring the suit on your behalf. And that in addition to the sovereign immunity problem, and that's what you're going to run into. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the system as it currently stands. I wish I had something better to tell you.
Earlier today I was talking with a friend, and they mentioned the ACLU, but the fat chance on that, considering that I applied for sovereignty, they're not going to want to help me either that way.
Well, not to mention, John, think about it. Think who the ACLU is, and think about who you are, man. You're small potatoes, bro.
John?
So my civil liberties don't mean jack. I understand. I'm just a slave. Don't mind me.
Go ahead, Griff.
John, I got an answer for you.
Hold on 1 second, Jim. Go ahead, Griff.
It's not an issue, John. Forget it. You're wasting your time and you're wasting your money. You will never get to first base. There are so many things going against you. The politics of the community will flare up. No attorney around you will ever take the case because it would destroy his legal practice. What you can do, if you're really bold and want to sacrifice your life, you can put a lien on the judge's house.
If you want to do that the right way.
You mean
Margo?
You mean a mechanic
liens on everybody's house?
Now hold on, Jim.
You better do it the right way, or they'll come after you big time.
That's
you
right.
mean a mechanic lien?
Jim is absolutely right.
Jim,
I'm doing it the right way. I'm putting a $76,800,000 lien on everything that a judge has, 4 police officers, a municipal court.
No.
Judge, his secretary,
but think
and
about
a law firm.
I was joking when I said that. I was joking.
Griff, Jim's doing it.
I know
he was talking about it on the last show. But Jim,
what I did, and I'll help you with this, John, if you're interested.
Oh, no.
The best thing that happened to you was not to be any attorney. When you go and hire an attorney, you have admitted that you're incompetent and you can't say anything unless you're on the stand. And attorneys, and I have been subject to that about 5 years ago, attorneys connive against you behind your back, and because they just do that. I mean, they make their little deals behind their back. And what I did, I got arrested 1 year ago, this November, for my private tags. I didn't get out of the truck. I didn't kill my truck. I made them break into the truck with me sitting there with the window about half down, sprayed me with pepper gas. I stayed 9 hours in jail, got out, and I signed everything. I had some friends post bail, but we got all that back, or most of it. They filed 3 things on me in the municipal, 3 things on me in the county. County kicked their 3 back. They didn't want anything to do with it. They were smarter than that municipal court. And I filed on them, and this is all over. I've heard Griff say this. It's follow the money, and that's what I always say. So what I have learned, I filed a commercial affidavit of notice, declaration and demand, fair notice and warning of commercial grace, notice of non-judicial proceeding. This is a U.S. SEC tracer flag, not a point of law. It comes under security USC 15. Okay, now it's non-judicial. I've taken it out of their hands. I sent them every one of them this. They were given 7 days to answer, and they didn't. I sent them a default notice. They were given 7 days to answer. I gave them about 21 days. And then I filed a deal into the United States District Court in that area against all of them involved. Then down at the bottom, I put John Doe's 1 through 50. If anybody else wants to jump in this, they can be added to it. And now I'm in the process right now of filling out my claim of liens on each and every one of them for $76,800,000. And once I get those filed and perfected after 21 days, because they have not answered anything that I've done, it's all acquiescence. And then I will turn that over to somebody to go to collecting for me. But I've got all the paperwork. Everything's been done by certified mail with return receipt. I've got a stack here to take a good pack mule to haul it all. But
let me ask you. Hold on, Jim. Margo, what do you think about what he did from a legal standpoint?
Well, from a legal standpoint, it's interesting. I mean, the remedies that he's taken into his own hands are fascinating. My problem is, and I understand that Texas is way better about this than most places, but where I'm from, that kind of thing would never fly. It just wouldn't. Like I said, get something like that into the court, the judge goes, does not.
Not in the court. I've taken it out of the court's hands.
Well, I understand that, but they don't see it that way. And, it would get back to a judge eventually, at least where I'm at, and they wouldn't even entertain it.
See, and here's my problem. This is my rub, and it's not that I have anything against anybody. That I would love to be able to just say go screw to all of these IRS agents and everybody else. But the problem that I have is it's perception, and if they don't perceive it to be legit, and they say, no, it's not legit, well, then what do you have backing you up, compared to this judge who has the government behind him? Do you understand what I'm saying? So he has the force behind him, and here's poor Jim from Amarillo, who was clearly wronged, and he comes and he does that, and he files it, and he says, ha, gotcha. Well, what do you have, though? You have a lien, but how do you enforce it? That's the question. So, Jim, how do you enforce that?
Turn it over to the sheriff, and if he don't want to do it, you give him 30 days, and then you file on him.
Right,
I've got all the paperwork already laid out.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
If the sheriff don't want to enforce it, you give him 30 days, and then you file on him for not declaration.
I know what you're saying, Jim.
Neglecting his duty or something.
Right, exactly right. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here. So you serve the sheriff, right? Now, But now
and,
you have
put him in the same deal. If he wants to be a part of this, then he's got $76 million against him.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Compare that to the currency that we use, right? Because that's a piece of paper. That's a piece of paper,
I will be asking
right?
for it in silver specie.
Right, but of course. But I'm saying compare it to that piece of paper that you're writing down and you're filing in court. Compare that to the currency that we use, the Federal Reserve notes. That's on paper, right? That's supposed to be worth something, right? But it's not. It's fiat because it has nothing backing it. There's nothing to back it up. And my thing to you, my question to you is...
I got something back in mine, though.
Well, that's my question to you.
I've got several federal laws back in my deal. This isn't something I just picked up out of the
Of course not,
internet.
Jim. No, of course not. But that's why, you see all these people that get jailed because of income tax evasion and everything else.
It's a different deal. That's a whole different...
Sure.
I mean,
but I'm saying there's no law on the book. There's no real law on the book that says you have to pay it.
That's right.
You understand? But they still go to jail because you're not dealing...
Like the lady said before, the 16th Amendment was never ratified.
Because you're not dealing with people that have respect for the law. Griff brought up a good... Griff, give Jim that scenario that you posed to your father-in-law about the death penalty. Remember?
You're going to get me in trouble on that, repeating that over the...
That's all right. Get in trouble.
I'm already catching some heat over some other stuff. Yeah. I was talking to the judge, and I said, here's a hypothetical case. You're the judge, and you have a jury, and somehow the man that's being tried for murder is innocent. I said this to the judge. He knows he's innocent, personally, somehow, magically. And the jury comes back and says, guilty. Would you sentence the man to death? And he said, yes. And I said, even though you know he's not guilty? He said, yes, the law is more important.
The law is more important.
The law is all.
Right.
But he would sentence him to death. So the law is convoluted, and the people are convoluted, and the world's full of low-class, thief, crazy people that have to be locked up. But in the mix, you get a lot of good people that are sucked up in this system with crazy prosecutors and crooked judges, and just the nature of the system today. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. I think, Jim, you probably are thinking about committing suicide. Are you?
Nope. No way. I'm gonna walk out of this world at 100 years old alive.
If you pursue this, you may commit suicide.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
It takes. First of all, Jim, it takes a lot of courage to be able to do what you're doing, and I certainly do applaud you for it. That much is certain. But I guess the point that I was trying to get across is that it doesn't matter these days if you have federal law on your side. If they don't respect it, if they don't, you often find that our public officials, our public servants, people who are supposed to serve the public interest, actually work above the law quite often, and they manipulate the law quite often to achieve whatever means they want to achieve. And you, sir, are fighting a battle against a true Goliath. I mean, really, it's like an ant trying to throw a pebble at Goliath, you know what I mean? And that's where you're at now. Now, before we get into anything else, I don't want to forget this. So, John, King's Court, baby, take it away today. Man, are you there?
There you go. That helps when you unmute me when you introduce me. Thanks anyways. You know, our forefathers have sacrificed their lives, their fortunes. Some have even had their children killed for the gift of freedom they give you. They risked everything they had and then some to give you the liberties and freedoms you've never had. Those liberties and freedoms have been stripped from you long before most of you were ever born. And as I have found out personally, that those freedoms are no longer valid.
Hey, John.
Yes.
John, while you're reading this, I just want to put something in the background. Go ahead and read it.
And woe be to the man who comes up against the status quo to challenge the state for those freedoms. I have been wrong in many aspects, and I stood firm, and luckily I've come out on top. I was innocent and would not budge. Granted, sometimes you have to take a step or two back and punt, but the end result is game over, and I have won. How the game is played does not matter as to the final result. I was ready to sacrifice my freedom for you so that I could show you the atrocities that I was going through in the system, and that I hope that my sacrifice was not in vain. It is my wish that the people call and ask questions as they learn from my experience. It was real, and it did happen to me. Now, I could have very easily roll into a ball and cower into the corner and fade away into nothingness. But if I were to do so, then all that I have sacrificed would be in vain. And all those fallen soldiers who have sacrificed themselves for what they perceived as freedom, they would have also done so in vain. Take the information that we provide you and spread the word. Let us show you what is hidden. You're not going to get this on the mainstream media. You're only going to get it one place, and that place is right here at the Intel Hub and Freedomlink Radio. No bull, no hype, just calling it as we see it. Joe and Griff, back to you.
And Jim, I actually have the judge that you're serving the $76 million lean-to on the line, and I want to bring him on. Judge, are you there? Oh, he hung up. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Jim.
It sounds like the Mercer County District Attorney.
Jim, you're messing with a very, very nasty bunch of people out there. That much I will tell you. Now, so take Jim's situation there, and tell me if Margo, if you think that what I'm saying is true, is that you may have the law on your side. You know, you may have the law on your side, but if you don't have that force behind you to enforce it, then what good is it? Because all these people do is usurp the law anyway. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, and here's why. In order for there to be a rule of law, there has to be, like I said in the beginning, respect and honesty. And respect and honesty means that the people who make the laws also are subjected to them. What we see now in current day is that there is a small elite group of people who make law, and that the law does not apply to them, but it applies to everybody else. And what is happening is, and I can't really go into detail about some of the cases that I'm working on right now, but I have some examples where, and John brought up a great example earlier. For instance, there's all these exceptions to the rule. You know, for instance, you have freedom of speech, but all of a sudden some sort of obscenity that someone might yell in a time of frustration would not be considered free speech because obscenity is an exception to the First Amendment, and so on and so forth. Or just like it might be violating wiretap for him to, you know, record audio in his home, but it's not a violation when the police do it. See, there's all of this hypocrisy going on. There's a major double standard, and whenever you have a major double standard like that, where, you know, people cannot be certain how the law is going to apply to them in any type of given situation. You know, for instance, someone may assume that their First Amendment applies, but they drop an F-bomb and all of a sudden it doesn't apply anymore because there's some sort of an exception. You've got all these exceptions floating around. There's uncertainty in the law. The law is not being uniformly applied, and you actually have a breakdown in the rule of law, and that's what we're seeing right now. So really, for someone to say that the law is on their side is almost kind of a strange statement, because from where I stand, I'm not really sure there is law anymore. I think that the rule of law is completely disintegrating, and it's becoming extremely unstable. You can't predict how it's going to apply, and, you know, people will sit there and scoff at a sovereignty argument, but at the same time, they may make an argument against a sovereignty argument that would hurt their own position. It's getting too inconsistent. There's too many cracks in the foundation, and eventually it's just not going to work out anymore, and something is going to have to be done at some point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Jim, are you back with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, sir. Okay. Very good. Did you happen to hear that your judge had called in?
Yeah, I heard it. I haven't ever been before the judge yet.
Oh, well, now you know what he sounds like when you go there. Yeah. So, but you know what, Margo and I, and that's the way I feel, Jim. Is that, you see, you're fighting from a very
I'm fighting from a position that I either had to roll over and play dead and let them just do whatever they want to do with me, or get busy and educate myself and get in there and fight them, and that's what I'm doing.
Right, exactly right. But see, you're going from a standpoint where you respect the law. You know what I mean?
I'm going after it and all the legal ramifications.
And they don't respect it. They don't respect it at all.
I had a county court clerk that wasn't going to file these papers, and I looked up some rules on that. I sent some paperwork in there a week ago this past Friday, and I was real nice. I sent a cover letter with it and explained it all just as nice as I could be, but I gave her a 2-sheet page of what's going to happen to her if she didn't file those. And the last sentence I said, I do not want to cause you any trouble. All I want to do is get these filed, and I expect these back no later than next week. I got them back on Friday.
Look at you.
But you just got to bow your neck up and stand up to them. See, that's the problem. You've talked about, I've been on these, well, I haven't been on too many calls, but that's how I found you guys. I went over and found it and listened to all the things you guys said. And all these other calls on it, everybody's saying, well, we got to stand up and do something. We got to stand up and do something. All of these sheeple, no one's doing anything. Well, that's it. That's the problem. There's just a few of us like John and I and a few more are doing anything, and everybody said, well, boy, you know, you better watch out. You know, well, all I can do is watch out and stay out of their way. And I live out here where it's flat and level. I can see them coming from a ways.
Now, Jim, down in Texas, where you live, you have a land patent, right?
Do what?
You have a land patent. You own your land outright.
I got a
correct?
land patent on, and it's copyrighted internationally.
Right, and so you don't pay property tax or anything like that,
property
correct?
tax. I don't have my truck registered. I don't have a driver's license. I don't have insurance.
Now, let me ask Margo, can you get a land patent in all 50 states? Could you do that?
Yes, you can.
Well, the perception might be that you can, but the reality is that it's not likely. It's probably easier in Texas than it is anywhere else, but I would say this. It's going to be extremely difficult for a person to get a land patent for one simple reason. If you have a land patent, you're not subject to property taxes in the sense that if you fail to pay the property taxes, the government cannot put an IRS lien or a property tax lien on your property. And so that being considered, the chances of the government trying to just voluntarily denying themselves the opportunity to collect that revenue is slim to none. And I'll tell you how I know. I am friends with a judge that used to do a lot of real estate work. And she had heard of land patents before. In fact, one client of hers had actually tried to obtain one. This lawyer, well, she was a very brilliant lawyer, I have to be honest with you. She did become a judge, and she was never successful in getting that land patent because most governments and people who are wise to the process are not going to allow you to file that type of paperwork and allow you to get away with foregoing your quote-unquote obligations to pay revenue to the state.
So I guess my question then is, if that's the case, then again, we're faced with the same type of thing. Yes, is there a path to it? Yeah, there probably is in every state. But is it recognized anymore? No, it probably isn't. Now, I know in Texas it is. As a matter of fact, that is the one state out of any state where it's not an issue. And and like I said, I only know this because of speaking with Mr. Benerick firsthand, and he's been through the process. And the reason why he moved to Texas was simply because of that. But outside of that, I mean, I would love to in North Carolina be able to do it. My whole thing is if I apply a dash of common sense and I say, if it was that easy, why the heck aren't people doing this in droves? You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. And part of the reason is, as an attorney, I've actually looked into the issue of land patents, and the majority of the land patents are held by the Bureau of Land Management. So really, you'd have to file your paperwork with the Bureau of Land Management. I don't know how it works in Texas, but at least for the jurisdictions I've looked at, you'd have to apply with the Bureau of Land Management to obtain a recognized patent on your land. Now, I'm sure there's other ways you can obtain a patent, but whether or not it will be recognized for the purposes that you're seeking it for is a totally different issue. And so in order to get a valid, recognizable land patent, you would actually have to apply to the Bureau of Land Management, which is a federal bureaucracy, just like everything else. And the odds of you getting approved for something like that are slim to none. And the odds of you getting put on some sort of list or red flagged for applying is exponentially high. So the problem...
No, you're right. Hold that thought. We got to go to break, Margo. But when we get back, Margo Lane, Jim from Amarillo, they're all joining us tonight. We're talking about sovereignty. We're going to the home stretch. This is Freedomlink Radio on the Intel Hub News Network. Stay tuned, everybody.
He got lucky, stole her back again. She heard he had a Mercury. Thought she's crazy about a Mercury.
Did you ever wish that you could have done something while you still had the chance? What will you do if your income ends tomorrow? Or if you lose your home, as many already have? Do you have enough money to survive through an economic depression? If you don't want to gamble with your future, then freetoprosper.com can help you quickly end your debt problems, protect your property and possessions, and develop a personal strategy to get you through the hard times. Most importantly, you get to keep your money and not pay another cent to creditors. Our program is often superior to bankruptcy, consolidation, or settlement. Visit freetoprosper.com to find out more. This is your real chance to act ahead, so don't delay. Your future may depend on it. Call 718-615-0123 to learn more. That's 718-615-0123. Or visit freetoprosper.com today.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
You are listening to the Intel Hub News Network, crushing the New World Order piece by piece.
In a world where corrupt oppressors and oligarchs have seized control of the populations, total tyranny is amongst us. The burden of humanity rests on our shoulders. The only way out is to expose the global crime syndicate known as the New World Order. Together, we are all one. Together, we are Intel soldiers. The battle for free humanity ensues. Join us in the fight. theintelhub.com.
Secure your future. Get your non-hybrid seed pack now. With the looming economic crisis, food shortages, and other toxic disasters, now is the time to be ready. Just click on the Heirloom Organics banner at the top of our Blog Talk Radio page today. Secure your future and the future of your family in hard times. Heirloom Organic Seeds.
Join me, Joe Joseph, John King, and A.C. Griffith, Thursdays and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern for Freedomlink Radio on the Intel Hub News Network.
The preacher man says it's the end of time, and the Mississippi River, she's a going dry. Is up and the stock market down, and you're only getting mugged if you go downtown. I live back in the woods, you see, a woman and the kids and the dogs and me.
Well, folks, we're back. We're joined by Margo Lane, Jim from Amarillo, and I've got a question from the chat room that I want to get out here before I lose my train of thought here. So let me get to this here. And Margo, it simply is to take control of your straw man. I guess the question I ask is about filing the UCC-1 to take back your straw man. Have you ever heard of that, trying to take control of it?
Yes, I have heard of that. That is something that gets discussed in a regular contract class in law school, actually.
Uh-huh. Well, what's that all about? How do you go about doing that if you were going to do that? Just out of curiosity, because I have no idea.
Well, there's a couple different opinions on that. I'll just kind of explain what a straw man is real quick for anybody who doesn't know.
Good.
Basically, in England back in like the 1600s, whenever someone would want to buy a piece of property or something like that, perhaps they didn't they didn't want to have the property right so that they would be subject to taxes. So what they would do is they would have a straw man buy the property and basically rent it to them, and that's how trusts were actually created, land trusts and stuff like that. And so really what it is if you think about it in modern day terms, it's almost like your avatar. It's kind of like your persona, but not necessarily you, but it represents you.
Gotcha.
And so essentially what you would be doing from a sovereign standpoint, if you decided to reclaim your straw man or whatever, is you would be renouncing your Social Security number. You would be renouncing parts of your identity that are government issued, basically saying, well, these numbers represent me, but they aren't me, and so I don't want to have this straw man anymore. If you want to deal with me, then you deal with me as a person, not as a Social Security number, not as, a barcode or whatever the case may be. The problem with that is, again, one, that kind of route is not recognized. And the reason it's not recognized is because your Social Security number is your collateral number. You're a piece of collateral. You've been put up as collateral. And all you need to do is take a look at some IMF reports to confirm this. And so because you are valuable as a piece of collateral, giving up your Social Security number is not something that the government is keen on recognizing.
I personally don't have a good idea. It's all there, but it's hard to wrap my arms around it. The other question that came from the chat room from the same person was that, and let me see if I can verbalize it as best I can. But I guess there's a letter of intent that sovereigns are filing with their Secretary of States, and like a claim of right. Have you heard about that also? I mean, I don't. Again, I'm new at this, so I don't know.
I've seen the forms for it. Again, it's kind of along the same principle. You're not going to. It's just not that easy. You can file all the paperwork you want. They're not going to recognize it. What's going to happen is they're going to red flag you, draw attention to yourself, and you're going to wind up in a situation like John where you're getting harassed for no good reason by the legal system simply because you've made yourself a target for wanting to claim your freedom and isolated yourself as an individual in that respect. It's sad because this country is supposed to be about freedom and we were basically bought and sold the lie of independence and all that kind of stuff. And yet when someone tries to exercise the same, they get, blacklisted, red flagged, whatever the case may be. And, it's interesting because you'd think it would fall into their freedom of speech to exercise a lot of this stuff. And somehow it doesn't. And, so the problem is that there needs to be more awareness of what is actually going on. And people need to stop and consider these topics a little bit and find ways to practice mass civil disobedience in a way that will not be violent but will draw attention to the problem and actually restore the power to the people where it belongs.
John, do you have any what do you say to that, John? I mean, you went through it firsthand. How do you feel about that?
Well,
John?
I feel like I've been sold a bill of goods that's not there. I mean, apple pie, white picket fences, truth, liberty, the American way of life. It's all facade. It's not there. The Constitution that our forefathers laid down for us to live under is no longer there. It's been sold out, and you're being sold a bill of goods that's just not valid anymore. I mean,
right.
Everything that you've learned from the time you were small and went through the indoctrination centers known as the public school system, it's not there. And it just angered me once I realized what was going on, and I took that step, and I made the effort to get rid of my straw man altogether, just try to kill him and walk away from it. And I got shown just exactly how harsh the system can be. I mean, I got raked over the coals so bad that when I sleep at night, I pack my ass full of cotton just so I don't hemorrhage.
John, I could have told you this 50 years ago. Next time you ask me before going through all the misery.
Yeah, that's true, John. Consult Griff. The life experience thing is always good, you know. And let me say this though, you know, people don't realize just how much power they wield. They really don't. I mean, as an individual, you may not, but when you start talking civil disobedience on a mass scale, they're going to come to find out quickly who has the power. You know, and they can threaten you all you want with military action, everything else. They cannot force you. They cannot force you to do anything. You ultimately have free will. Whether you think so or not, you do. You have the choice to say yes or no. You have the choice to decide to do something or not to do something. And the thing is people need to feel more empowered. And right now they don't. They feel beaten down. They feel 22.5% unemployment. They feel, cost of living going up, but wages not. And they're seeing the family structure broken down, the morality broken down in this country. And it's all taken its toll, and it's all engineered, and it's all meant to bring us to our knees. And the problem is people are getting on their knees. They are. They're doing it. So my thing is simply don't get on your knees. Stand up. Stand up. And, folks, it doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't. When you talk about effort, just informing other people could be your part in it all. You know what I mean? But the fact remains that you cannot sit idly by and do nothing. That is the big thing. That's the big problem. And guys like Jim, I mean, my hat's off to you, brother. I mean, you're standing up against the beast. You know, it is a task that I certainly don't envy you for, because I'd be hard pressed to do it. Let me ask you this, Jim: if you had to do this 50 years ago, would you do it?
Didn't even know about it 50 years ago.
No, but I'm saying, say you're 24 years old.
50 years ago? No, I was in the middle of going to college at 23 and just got started. This was the furthest thing in my mind. I didn't owe anybody anything. I didn't own anything but an old car to get me to school, and had a sleeping room I paid a few dollars a week for. I didn't have any reason to fight, and didn't even think about it. It was the furthest thing from my mind. But the more you come up the ladder and the more educated you get, and that's one reason that they're doing their dead level best right now to do away with the internet, because that's where guys like me learn a lot of this stuff is on the internet. You go there, you can research anything. You can Google bullshit, and it'll be an explanation there for you.
Well, Jim, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I'm gonna have to I gotta let you go because I gotta get to some different stuff here. But I will tell you this, folks: it's guys like Jim that are really, really making a difference here and really showing that, you know, one person can stand up and make a difference and catch that lightning in a bottle. It's just how you do it. You know, you never know when it's going to happen. You never know how it's going to happen, but it can most certainly happen. And you can't give up. You can't give up. And that's why crime fighters like the Grifster here are still doing it after all these years. Isn't that right, Griff?
I'm not sure, Joe. But I do want to tell Margo my plan for civil disobedience. I think I've stumbled on it. Margo, if we all can put our stamps on the lower part of the letter and not up in the upper right-hand corner, it'll stop the post office nationwide. everything will stop. All of the mail will stop. So if you want to spearhead that program, that's all we have to do.
That's a simple solution. Another one that I've heard is if everyone goes out and buys 1 ounce of silver on one given day, that will also have the same effect. And it will also, there's so many different ways that, the people of this country could really put the hurt on if they wanted to. If you could just get a third of the population to go along with it at the same time, it's just, the problem is I think people keep looking for a leader. They keep looking for somebody to lead the cause or to lead the charge or what have you, and they don't stop to think that maybe it's them. Maybe
Right.
They're the ones that need to do something.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's funny too, because if you go by the current structure of how elections are set up, assuming that they are that they're done with no shenanigans. I mean, look at the amount of money you got to raise just to be competitive. Look at how these third-party candidates just get their butts handed to them time and time again, and and how, and because they're just outspent, 100, 1,000 to 1, and the corporations, the elitists in this country have total control. They do. They put who they want in the White House because that's where you follow. It's like Griff says, follow the trail of money, and that's just it. So you're right. Guys like Ron Paul, fantastic, man. I want to give that guy a hug. If I ever get a chance to see him, that's the first thing I do. I don't even think I'll have words to say. I'm just going to hug him. Say, oh, God, you make me feel so good. But, it's just, it's that. You'll never see him get in the White House. I just don't see it. Because even if you can get past the money thing, you still have to get past the 50% or so of Americans that are on that like the entitlements, that like the freebies, the giveaways, that are, of course, your children are paying for. And it's kind of like
and you have to get past the voting machines and the unions that service them.
That's right, of course. I mean, it's so doggone corrupt that's why I keep saying it, and Griff says it too. It's just got to come crashing down. The only way that you're actually going to do it is just to have a gigantic house cleaning. Let the system just crash because it's unsustainable, and let's pick up where we left off, or let's start over. Hey Griff, it's kind of like you said. Just get the pencil eraser out. And then hey, look at that, debt's gone. Woohoo!
Yeah, the money system doesn't have to collapse. You can do it with a pencil, turn it all around. Margo, you missed a good one the other night. We had Bob Chapman on from the International Forecaster newsletter, and it was really exciting for me. I'm still basking in some of the comments that were made on that broadcast. How about you, Joe?
It was one of the best hours of radio I think we've done in quite some time, Griff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to talk about just a very revealing type of interview. It certainly was that, wasn't it?
Yes. I'll never forget it.
I'm sorry that I missed it. I was actually ringing the bell for Salvation Army on Thursday night. So.
Oh, and that's great. But to make a long story short, and folks, if you guys want to hear the podcast, you can watch the archive, of course, or if you go to my YouTube channel, Admiral Conservative, you can actually, I have the hour part of the show actually up on my channel if you want to listen to it there as well. So it's available in both places. But he basically, we had gotten to Ambassador Leo Wanta and the stuff that's going on there. And it was interesting because, you don't know how far to take things with people, especially something as touchy as that subject, because anybody that's an economist has some sort of knowledge about the things that Ambassador Wanta embarked on. And he was very, very, just in the simple fact that, he asked a simple question. Well, Griff, do you think Chris Story was murdered? Now, Chris Story was the reporter that was investigating it, and of course he was murdered. But that one question in and of itself was enough to acknowledge that he's aware of it and that he's very up to speed on what's really going on, and really kind of gave me a level of trust with Bob Chapman that I haven't had with too many people. What would you say, Griff?
I just absolutely admire Bob Chapman after he made the few comments that he did about Leo Wanta. He's really in tune. He believes that's what happened. He believes that that's why the world monetary system is collapsing, because of the overthrow of the Soviet ruble and the $27 trillion and all of the stories associated with that.
Right. But what is it? No, I'm not going to get into that.
Well, he also feels that the only salvation we have is a total collapse, and he says repeatedly that it can't be sustained.
No, absolutely right.
1812 Overture.
Yes, sir. We're going to hit a break real quick. When we come back, we'll wrap it up, folks. So stay tuned. This is Freedomlink Radio on the Intel Hub News Network. We'll be right back.
Did you ever wish that you could have done something while you still had the chance? What will you do if your income ends tomorrow? Or if you lose your home, as many already have? Do you have enough money to survive through an economic depression? If you don't want to gamble with your future, then FreeToProsper.com can help you quickly end your debt problems, protect your property and possessions, and develop a personal strategy to get you through the hard times. Most importantly, you get to keep your money and not pay another cent to creditors. Our program is often superior to bankruptcy, consolidation, or settlement. Visit FreeToProsper.com to find out more. This is your real chance to act ahead, so don't delay. Your future may depend on it. Call 718-615-0123 to learn more. That's 718-615-0123. Or visit FreeToProsper.com today.
Is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
You are listening to the Intel Hub News Network, crushing the New World Order piece by piece.
In a world where corrupt oppressors and oligarchs have seized control of the populations, total tyranny is amongst us. The burden of humanity rests on our shoulders. The only way out is to expose the global crime syndicate known as the New World Order. Together, we are all one. Together, we are Intel soldiers. The battle for free humanity ensues. Join us in the fight. TheIntelHub.com.
Secure your future. Get your non-hybrid seed pack now. With the looming economic crisis, food shortages, and other toxic disasters, now is the time to be ready. Just click on the Heirloom Organics banner at the top of our Blog Talk Radio page today. Secure your future and the future of your family in hard times. Heirloom Organic Seeds.
Join me, Joe Joseph, John King, and A.C. Griffith, Thursdays and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern for Freedomlink Radio on the Intel Hub News Network. Well, folks, what a fantastic show we've had tonight. And, sovereignty is such a tough issue to go up against. So, I mean, Margo, we got to have you back on for some law talk, I guess you could say. And I certainly do value your opinion, because if there's one thing that I appreciate about you is the fact that you're grounded. And quite often you run into a lot of people out there that they're not firmly planted, you know what I mean, as far as keeping a level head on things. So you certainly helped me understand some issues with this, and I'm going to be looking into it a lot more for sure.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Anytime, I would love to come back if you would like to do this again, and I really appreciate it. And I think the only thing that I would tell the the listeners would be that, no matter what your opinion is, it's okay to disagree with people. I think it's come time where people just need to start being honest, stop judging one another, and respecting each other's space and boundaries. It's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to try to perpetuate this cycle of coercion that's been going on in our system and in our society.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, folks, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, that's our next show. We have G. Edward Griffin on. We're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff, from the Leo Wanta stuff to the Federal Reserve to chemtrails. Yes, we're going to have one heck of a doozy for you on Thursday. But, Griff, always a pleasure, my man. Thank you for all your efforts. And, Margo, a wonderful evening, and yes, we will most certainly have you on. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get you on with Michael Bednarik, and we're going to have a nice big roundtable discussion with him. So I will schedule that, and I'll email you when that's going to go down. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. Sounds good. I could fill you in on how our election went this past fall.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Well, folks, we're out of time. So join us again Thursday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on the Intel Hub News Network. Good night.